Okay, so since you've shown me kind of how you break this up, and now I'm kind of thinking about how it is that I keep track of whether students are understanding what it is that we're doing, standard wise, strategies, all these different things. And I know that previously, during interactive read alouds, especially, I get up and actually walk over as my students are stopping and jotting and turning and talking. I listen to them. I guide their questioning, whatever it may be, as well as during mini lessons. If we're turning and talking, I'm able to hear them, or maybe they're writing in their reader's notebooks. I'm able to kind of go around the room and see what it is that they've been discussing, all of these different things.
So conferring, you're
conferring with the students. What I'm thinking though is, if you're planning out an entire unit, if I'm just thinking about just all the different standards, all these different things, how in the world is it I'm going to be able to make sure that the students are on track? Have that documentation to be able to show that this is working.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good question. So okay, so I told you how on Unit 2, I started at the beginning of Unit 2, and I mapped out 2A, 2B, and 2C before 2A even got started. And then, so obviously I'm, at the beginning of 2A, there were 2C standards that I was covering during read aloud and my mini lessons and whatever else. One of them, for example, RL21. I can support my answers with explicit information from the text. So, one of the big things, as you know, that we've been doing is race to respond, using evidence in the story, from the story in our answers. So one of the things that I use is something that I call a comprehension assessment. So let me show you kind of like what that looks like. So we've been doing this whole segregation unit. So I've picked a bunch of books that will fit into my segregation unit, but I can also use to target these standards during read aloud, during my mini lesson, and what have you. So I've introduced tons of different segregation books, and then about halfway through, I wanted to see, do my kids understand how to race to respond on their own with a grade level text? Obviously, we understand that, iRead and iStep are all going to be on grade level. And so despite what reading level the child is reading at, they have to be able to understand how to navigate through a grade level text. So what I did is I found a grade level appropriate, this is a level M, Going Someplace Special. So this is a book that it also has to do with segregation. And so, my kids have had numerous talks about segregation. I've front loaded a lot of information. We've had discussions during read aloud. They've written, they've raced to respond.
Everything.
And so I wanted to see, can you read this grade level text about a topic you already know a lot about, and can you race to respond, for example, to go with that standard
tying it
on your own?
In.
Yep. And this was about halfway through. So this is before Pivot even took place with this. And so what I did was I copied the entire text for each of the students, and then I strategically placed Post-its on specific pages and copied those Post-its as well. So for example, I had a Post-it here with just a big number 1 written and circled it. I have that going throughout. You'll see some, later on, here's 2 and 3, and it goes on. I also developed this comprehension assessment, and so I came up with text-dependent questions that the kids could use this grade level text about segregation to answer while racing to respond. And so, for example, I instructed the kids to, read the book on their own, and whenever they got to a page with a Post-it, they needed to stop, put their book to the side for a second, look at their assessment, read the question, and then use their text to race to respond to be able to do this. And so kids were able to, once they've written, they've done question 1, they've raced to respond, they put down their pencil, now they continue picking up the text, and they continue reading. And so this is taking all the things that we've done with segregation and all the different teaching points that I've tucked into read alouds and mini lessons. For example, paying attention to characters' hands and faces and making sure that we're looking at all those little details about what the characters say and how the characters act and the motivations of the characters.
How they change.
Right, exactly. So can they do this on their own? And so this was a big help for me, because once the students were all done with this comprehension assessment, they handed it in to me, and then I was able to take it home over a weekend and look at their responses. That totally gave me such great insight on what they were able to do on their own. So one of the biggest things that I feel like a huge revelation is that we need to teach the reader and not the book.
Right.
Okay, so we need to teach the reader how to do different reading skills and strategies, and not how to just understand the one story that we do for the week.
Right.
Okay, so I was able to look at this and see, my kids understand a lot of segregation. Are they able to race to respond and use evidence from the
so
text?
You're hitting multiple things all at once.
Exactly.
Multiple standards, strategies,
Exactly.
everything all together.
And then I was able to use these to then guide my instruction. And so, when I looked at these, some were amazing. And I was like, they get it. And then some of them were
Really
not.
struggled.
And I looked at it and I was like, okay, so they don't know how to race to respond. They are not sure how to use information from the text to use it in their answer, to support their answer. And so that was a big eye-opener for me, because I was able to use this and then say, you know what, next week my teaching points are now going to be this because they didn't understand how to do this as a whole. Now, granted, if your kids can do a lot of this by themselves, maybe you have a few, then you target it in small group. And so this is actually a very good assessment. Plus, it gets them practice doing what you're doing, and it gets them practice reading a grade level text.
Yeah, and so was this grade level text something that they had read before, or it was just literally just put it in front of them?
This is one that in years past, when I've done my segregation unit, this is one that I would have read out loud during read aloud. But this year I was like, let me pull this one aside.
And
it's
so
on grade level,
what they're going
and
to do on their own.
they were able to do it on their own.
Okay.
So that's one way to target it before you get to pivot. Giving them something like this. Can you do this on your own?
Which is smart, because you don't want to wait until the final assessment just to guide instruction for a whole unit, which is usually 3 to 4 weeks, or
you want to see
longer.
How your kids are doing.
Right.
So
as you go.
So using your conferring piece that you use, and we get up and we walk around and we have these conversations with kids. Well, now letting that not be the only piece of assessment, but also doing this as well.
Yeah, because it's such a writing is such a huge portion now of everything that we do in language arts. So I like that. Super cool.